Welcome to episode 154, where on this episode we debate whether it's Professor X or Magneto's worldview about whether this is going to be a good episode of the Campus Comics Cast or not. All right, I don't know who's on whose side, but irregardless, I'm Scott Reed, and I'm joined on this episode by
Mike Atchison, a.k.a. Team Magneto.
And Shad Schubert.
Are you not going to be Team Professor X, Shad?
No, I'll be Team Magneto.
I'll be X. Yeah, I'll be Professor
Okay,
X.
all right. And I'll be the versus that sits between there you go. This is, of course, the official podcast for Muddy Monster Comics, located at 1422 Walnut Street in Murfreesboro, Illinois. And I guess we all got to see Antman Quantum Mania. And I'm embarrassed to say, like, up until, I don't know, like after the second trailer, it was that long before I realized that Ant-Man was in the words Quantum Mania. So, you know, you got Quantum, Q-U-A-N-T, and then Mania, M-A-N. I didn't realize that for a little while.
I didn't either. Still didn't
right over my head.
I didn't notice until the ending credits, or the very end of the movie, where they sort of zoomed in or zoomed out, and you could see they emphasized the Ant-Man part of Quantum Mania. And I'm like, well, that's clever, kind of, you know.
Okay, well, I'm glad I'm not the only one that flew over their heads then. So
yeah, not at all. Wasn't there.
But I got to see it last Thursday night, opening night. When did you guys see it?
I saw it
I
Sunday.
seen it on Sunday. Yeah.
Sunday. Okay.
Oh no, I seen it Saturday. Sorry.
Saturday. Okay. All right. So I guess I don't know who wants to say what they thought about it real quick. We're not going to get deep dive into it, but
I don't know. Rocks, paper, scissors. Anybody?
Okay, I'll just go. So
go ahead.
Talking, right? Yeah. So I actually liked it. Okay. You know, I don't think it was good as the previous two Ant-Man movies. I still really like the second one quite a bit. I like the first two. The first one was kind of the surprise. It's like a Guardians of the Galaxy type surprise for the first one, right? And then the second one, Evangeline Lilly and the actress who played Ghost, I forgot what her name is, really carried that movie.
Mm-hmm.
This one was a little too CGI heavy for me. Fortunately it used those CGI and CGI characters for the comedic effect instead of taking it out on the characters, the main characters, which I actually appreciated. But I thought it was solid, not great, definitely not in the upper echelon of Marvel movies. But I am super excited moving forward for Jonathan Majors as Kang, what we're going to see from him in these upcoming MCU movies. So,
yeah. Well, we might as well go in order of the order we watched it. So I'll go next. I wouldn't call it was serviceable, but I would not call it good at all. I had pretty high hopes for it going in. I thought the trailers were pretty good, but a few of I agree with you. I enjoyed the first two Ant-Man movies much better. Some of the like the coyness of Michelle Pfeiffer's character. I forget her name now. Of being
Janet Van Dyne.
Yes, Janet Van Dyne. Of not wanting to, say what happened to her in the quantum realm all that time. I mean, we just heard that over and over, her being reluctant to say it. I'm like, okay, we get it, all right, just spill your guts. They overplayed that a little bit. I mean, it's a good superhero movie. I mean, if you like superheroes, you're not going to be disappointed. But I think the bar is set sort of high over the last few years, and it's hard for a lot of these movies to kind of meet the same or get the same reaction with new movies. And the CGI was, I don't know that I'm qualified to talk about how good or bad CGI is, but I felt like that's all you had was CGI because you're in the quantum realm. It was sort of like overstimulating at times, and like, man, but then again, some of the alien life forms were kind of cool, but it was also sort of tropey. Jonathan Majors was the biggest, if not sole, redeeming quality of the movie. I thought as an actor, he's very convincing as a megalomaniac. That's he's got charisma. He can talk people into things and then turn around and just stab you in the back. But overall, I was, I just could have taken it or left it, either way. So middle of the road for me.
Shad, what about you?
I'd say, yeah, I'm a middle of the road, but like a little bit higher than a middle of the road. There were a lot of really cool things. I felt like it was a cool introduction to Kang, though I don't know enough about Kang to say this for certain, but I felt like it was a little bit of he could have handled Ant-Man and his crew pretty easily. It felt like a pretty small level hero going against a giant big gun and actually coming out pretty well ahead. Spoilers, in the grand scheme of things was like, well, that felt a little off balance. It would have been like having Thanos right out the gate going to fight against, Black Widow or something, it felt a little off balance going into it, but I liked the CG seemed pretty good to me. And the MODOK of it all was probably my biggest disappointment. Is Darren MODOK in canon? Okay, I didn't think so.
No, yeah.
Okay.
That was just so they could tie in though to the previous Ant-Man movies.
And that's what I figured.
Yeah. I was not to cut you off, but
no, you're good.
Whenever they announced MODOK, they didn't say MODOK, right? They said organism designed only for killing, and I was sitting there. I put my hands in my head, and I said, please don't let this be Patton Oswalt. Please don't let this be. So I was so relieved it wasn't Patton Oswalt that I had taken anybody. And probably if that thought hadn't crossed my head before, I probably would not have liked Darren and even some of his lines were nonsense, stupid. Yeah. And the effect on his face was not great. Again, poor CGI. But I was happier with what we got than what it could have been. So,
but I think I'm right in line with you guys that Jonathan Majors Kang is like I'm glad we're stuck with that for the next like few years. Like that is definitely a good thing. That's not a problem at all.
That was another one of the CGI things. Whenever they tried to be comic accurate and put the blue filter over Jonathan Majors' face, and it looked terrible. Whenever they had that blue filter over his face, it just looked so bad. It's like his face was enlarged to fill it, and it just didn't look right. And once it got removed, then it looked okay. But man, it just looked so bad when they put that blue on there. Just another example of bad CGI. So.
I did, one of my big things, and I guess it gives totally spoilers, but like I wanted there to be a little bit of weight, and I felt like we were going to have a death of at least one major character in here. And I was like, this makes sense. And this would make this movie better if we did, but we didn't, unfortunately. No.
One thing that took me out of it was that it seems like everybody and their brother and sister had this Ant-Man's powers. I mean, it's like it's the Ant-Man family.
It is. So yeah,
it is literally, and but still they got all the same powers. Even Janet, I didn't realize she even had access to do that or the skills, but she did show early on she had some fighting skills.
Well, that goes all the way back to the first movie,
Yeah.
So yeah. Now I lost my train, so go ahead and talk.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, I was going back to somebody dying, right? I was, about 2/3 of the way through the movie. I said, okay, Hank Pym's going to die. Hope and Scott are going to get stuck in the quantum realm again, right?
Yeah.
And that's would give it some gravity,
Right.
And it would either they're probably pretty clearing going towards Young Avengers,
right?
So that would move Cassie to the forefront, for Young Avengers stuff, and plus we get there's cast bloat in this series now. There's
absolutely
too many characters they're having to share time with. It's like my big complaint with like the CW. That's not a computer company. It's the CW series is that those series, like the Flash started, it was the Flash for about 2 episodes, and then immediately blow it up with like there's 5 or 6 main characters that have powers, and they're having to give time to all of those characters. Well, that's happening here in in Quantum Mania and Ant-Man as well. So it would have been nice to, cull that down a little bit just to, and they had some good opportunities. Plus, get out of some of these contracts. Do they need Michael Douglas around for another movie? I don't think so. So
yeah. So the Kang. Wait, is this the multiple Kangs? Is that in the trailer or the post credit?
That's in the post credit? Yeah. It's in the middle. Right. It's in the first post credit scene.
I couldn't remember because I remember at the end you got Scott walking down the sidewalk all happy. He's not even considered, or they don't think he's Spider-Man anymore. He's kind of being recognized
he's
for
being
Bugman
or whatever.
Yeah, he's Bugman. Yeah.
Has to start paying for his lattes. So yeah.
It sounds like something I would do. They'll be happy, and then something just really like a big downer just dawns on me, and he's thinking about, wow, there's a worse Kang out there, and then seeing the after credit, end credit, whatever it was, with the infinite number of infinite number of Kangs. I thought, wow, that's
the Council of Kangs.
The Council of Kangs. Is that something that's canon from the
comics? Yeah, that is. And you have the I think you have the three main ones that they showed. Ramatut, all right, which is like the Egyptian one, it's like a predecessor. Then you have Immortus, who's kind of like the future Kang. The other one, I guess, is just kind of a regular Kang, though they didn't, say that it was regular Kang. I don't know that it is a specific Kang. Kind of the weird cheering that was going on amongst the Council of Kang, though, was a little bit weird when they kind of panned across all different Kangs. That was weird, but it was kind of cool to see, see all the timelines. And the second post-credit scene with Loki and Owen Wilson, Mobius, so we know we're going to get that for Loki season 2, and probably some more Kang in Loki season 2 as well. So
yeah.
So want to grade it?
Sure, yeah. So I'll start. I'm going to be fine, very fine, which is 7.0. Not as good as the first two. It was the first of the Ant-Man movies that was actually like a superhero movie as opposed to a heist or a car chase movie, right? But it just had a little bit too much bloat, and too much character sprawl, and too many bad CGI scenes to give it, to rank it any higher. So.
Okay. I'm going to give it a fine minus 5.5 just because it's just what it is. It's just fine, maybe a little bit less in my mind.
And I'll go with the 7.0, the fine, very fine. I would agree with that. Maybe for slightly different reasons, but all landing around the same grade.
All right. So let's jump into comics, right? Since that's what we want to talk about. So first up, we got two things we want to talk about. First is X-Men God Loves, Man Kills, back from 1990. And then we're going to follow that up with Dead Boy Detectives. I can't remember which volume this is.
This is the Sandman Presents the Dead Boy Detectives, volume 1.
So it's a volume 1 because it has the extra stuff in the title. Right? That makes it a little bit longer. So
wait, Scott, you said, did you say 1990 or 1980? I thought that came out like 81 or something.
I double checked before we went on, and I thought I saw 1990, but I may have, got erroneous information. It had to have been 90. Let me
83 is the copyright in the book.
Okay, so all right. So I guess got bad information then. So
it seemed that because in 90 I bought it off the shelf, the original Marvel graphic novel number 5. So I knew it had to be when I was buying stuff like that. And in 1990 I wasn't. So okay.
So I must have picked up my copy then earlier than I thought, because I didn't really start buying comics until I started pretty young, but I wasn't able to get to an actual comic shop for quite a while after I had been buying comics. So it was tough for me. It would have been tough for me to track this down, but I've had this since not long after it came out, because I've got my original copy of this. So I thought it was a little bit later, but when I saw 1990, it didn't feel right, but like, oh, okay, I guess it was later than I thought. So. Well, good. So 83. All right. I felt like it was supposed to be earlier than 90. So good. All right. Find my notes here. That's the wrong notes. Here's the notes. So this was, as Mike said, this was originally Marvel graphic novel number 5. And there's really only like 3 of these graphic novels that really, really stood out. There was the Death of Captain Marvel one. There's the first appearance of the New Mutants in number 4, and then this one, number 5, Marvel graphic number 5, God Love Man's Kills, by Christopher Claremont and art by Brent Eric Anderson. So, I don't know, do you guys want to say anything about those creators before I dive into the synopsis?
I'll probably talk about Anderson's art when we get into our comments, but
okay.
Yeah, I would say though, there was one other Marvel graphic novel that I remember as being good, and that's Emperor Doom. I don't know where that falls in the series of Marvel graphic novels, but I just remember that. I have it, and I remember it being pretty darn good.
I just don't remember. It may be good, and a lot of them probably were good, but they didn't really have any impact, I feel like, down the road. But maybe I don't know that I've read Emperor Doom.
It came out in 1987, so a little bit later.
So anyway, so our story starts with 2 young children being chased through a playground by the Purifiers, where they are killed and strung up by the swings in the playground with the word mutie emblazoned on the seat. Later, Magneto discovers their bodies and vows to make whomever is responsible for pay. Next, we meet up with Reverend Stryker, a preacher who's going to be the antagonist for the story, as he reviews the skills and powers of the various X-Men. Next, we meet up with Kitty Pryde, who happens to get in a fight with a guy who has nothing good to say about mutants, and because he's been influenced by Reverend Stryker and his kind of his worldview. When Kitty is told that the words that he are using are just words, she asks her black instructor how she would have responded if he had used the N-word. And we can talk about that part of it later on. But Xavier, who is returning from a televised debate with Stryker, and at the time it seems that the media is pushing Stryker's take on the story more so than Xavier's. His vehicle is ambushed by the Purifiers, and he, Cyclops, and Storm are taken captive. Back on the X-Men grounds, Kitty and Elanya, who is Colossus' sister, discover the X-Men are being monitored and wait for whomever it is doing that to show up to fix their now damaged equipment, damaged by Kitty Pryde. When the Purifiers show up, Elanya is captured, but Kitty is able to sneak into the vehicle trunk and hitch a ride to wherever they are taking Elanya. Back at the Professor's accident scene, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, and Colossus are attacked by yet another group of Purifiers, and at the end of the fight, Magneto intervenes. Magneto then tortures the Purifiers to extract information and learns that they are working for Reverend Stryker and that their goal is the eradication of mutants. The captured professor, who is being mentally assaulted in an attempt to turn him to Stryker's cause, because ultimately Stryker wants to use him as a weapon in his crusade against mutant kind. We learn that Stryker's own wife delivered a mutant child, and the child died at birth. And whenever his wife asked for the child, Stryker broke his wife's own neck and then conveniently destroyed their bodies in a fire caused by a vehicle accident. Kitty Pryde manages to escape from the Purifiers after being chased by gangs and more Purifiers, and is later reunited with her X-Men companions, who are there along with Magneto. Back to the captured Professor X, who is seemingly turned by Reverend Stryker and is tricked or convinced to kill both Cyclops and Storm. The X-Men attempt to rescue their captured teammates and do find that Cyclops and Storm are alive, but just barely. So seemingly Xavier was still in enough control to not kill some of his X-Men. At a large rally, Stryker unleashes his master plan to use Xavier's mental powers to identify and kill all mutants. Magneto confronts Stryker, but Stryker uses Xavier to attack Magneto. The X-Men enter the mega rally, and with the help of some tactical maneuvers by Cyclops and a feigned attack by Wolverine, they're able to knock Professor Xavier unconscious, thus rendering Stryker's weapon useless. Stryker, however, picks up a discarded gun and threatens to shoot Nightcrawler, who he refers to as a demon, but when Kitty stands in the way, a police officer shoots and apparently kills Stryker. The X-Men, back on their mansion grounds, debate the future of how mutants will then interact with humans and whether their methods will succeed or will Magneto's methods be necessary in the future. So there you go. My synopsis for God Loves Man Kills. Any major point you feel like I omitted in that synopsis?
It was very good, the synopsis. I don't know. I don't think you mentioned that there towards the end that Stryker inadvertently killed his own daughter too, right?
It wasn't his daughter.
I'm sorry, it was his protege.
His number one. She's kind of in charge of the purifiers. I thought that would give us some things to talk about.
Sure.
But so she's in charge of the purifier. So whenever this weapon that he has designed that needs Professor Xavier's mental powers to unleash, what happens is everybody who's a mutant starts bleeding from the nose and ears.
Yeah.
And when his purifier number one also starts bleeding from the nose and ears, instead of changing his mind, he just pushes her off the stage and she falls and breaks her neck and dies from the fall. But there's also some politicians who start bleeding, people out on the streets, because it has this, I guess, gradually expanding radius of impact. So you have some unexpected people start having adverse effects to this weapon that Stryker's made.
I will say, Stryker doesn't die.
Okay, so he does not die. Okay,
he does not die. Yep.
I read it and then I double checked and it looked like he'd been shot in the heart, but
there's in the epilogue there's a news report that says William Stryker was arraigned today on charges of arising out of the recent activities, blah 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 blah.
Thank you. I forgot about that part of it.
So he lives to terrify again. At the end.
I'm trying to remember if they used him at any point in the future.
That's what I did not realize, that Stryker wasn't a bigger bad in the comics. Mainly a movie X-Men fan, like not really diving deep in on the comic side. To historically, X2 is very much based on this book, and so you get the feeling that Stryker is this thing that's been around. And then is he not very prevalent in the Wolverine Origins movie as well? Is he not the creator of?
No, well, it's a
Wolverine?
different. Okay, so it's a different take on the character. So Stryker in there is more of a military guy.
He's a military guy, which he's not ex-military.
Yeah, that's true. He is ex-military here.
They just don't. They leave the religious part out of it for the movies.
Yes. Yeah. So let's see. Okay, we were going to talk about the artwork. Now, the one thing about this book is when you're used to artists like John Byrne on X-Men, no matter who else is doing it, it's going to be tough to really super enjoy the artwork here. So it's not bad, but it's not what I'm used to seeing on an X-Men book. So I know, Mike, you said you had some comments about the artwork.
Even before I read, I think it was in the after matter or the back matter of the book, that Neil Adams was first approached by Shooter to do the art, but because of differences or conflicts in the contract arrangement, he bowed out. I thought that this Brent Anderson had a very similar style to Adams. Not as refined, I don't think, but I didn't have, and I'm not using the same baseline as you with Byrne. So this to me seemed like pretty darn good artwork to me. It had also a very 80s feel, using the television and the news reporting, a la The Dark Knight Returns and things like that, to kind of give context.
Narrate the story.
The was pretty good. Yeah. There was, I've seen X2, but man, it's been a long time ago, and I kind of found where some of the similarities and differences between the two, but I don't know that it's worth really mentioning. It's just that there was he was the main villain in X2, and there was very much the same, but then again, there were significant differences as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I liked the artwork a lot as well. I was a big fan. Felt like I agree with you completely. Very 80s, but this was the kind of like 80s book that I was digging on. I was like, okay, there's a fine line between books that I enjoy from this era and books that I could just live without completely. And this this one I really scratched that itch. I enjoyed the artwork. I guess I'm not familiar with him as an artist, but he did essentially all of the Astro City stuff. Is the other big thing he's known for is
I didn't know that.
Is doing that with Kurt Busiek.
Oh, okay.
Probably the best part of his art was the cover, and I mean I'm talking about the original graphic novel cover.
Yes.
I think this reprint that I have, where it's just a black background, it doesn't even show all the X-Men. It just shows Nightcrawler, Cyclops, right, Wolverine, and Colossus. It doesn't show Storm or Kitty Pryde.
Kitty Pryde. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't show all the the image, the background images either. So I remember as a kid getting this, thinking, oh wow, this. I just love the structure of the cover. Each of the X-Men are kind of in their own pose, doing their own thing, and it looks like they were pieced together from different action scenes, but yet as if they do belong together. So it just always resonated with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely is a very iconic cover. I mean, it's one people recognize, and
it's poster level. I'd love to have that as a poster.
And another image that is maybe unfortunately iconic, all right, it's one that sticks with you, is that image on the third page where you have, and it's really a very small image in the book, but it's been reprinted so many times outside of it when this book is referred to, where you have just the front of the young boy's chest where it has Muty written on the swing.
Oh
right?
Yeah.
That image sticks with you as well. You know, it's
sure does.
Yeah. That's one I definitely remember from this story, from reading it the very first time. So
yeah. Oh, the introductory scene is shocking. I mean, even now. And I've read this. That's why I bought this 2016 reprint, was so I could keep rereading without tearing up my original copy. So, but I've read this several times, and that's saying something for me. I mean, I don't have a ton of Marvel books, but this one's been on the top shelf for me.
I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of notes about this. I guess I should talk about this. The special edition up on Marvel Unlimited does add in this little caveat thing. So it says, this previously published content includes negative depictions of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and wrong now. Social change is a journey, and we must acknowledge where we've come from to build a more inclusive future. And it's all strings from Kitty Pryde using the N-word to try to prove a point with her instructor that, you know, she would feel differently if a different word had been used in the powers of words. And this is, of course, you know, the whole mutant thing from pretty close to its beginning, it's always been an allegory for racism. And this just kind of really trying to drive home that point, that it's again just an allegory for racism. I don't know what else to say other than that.
Well, and that's one of my notes was, this is such a good story, and unfortunately it's such a good story because it still feels relevant today.
Yeah,
like it's so good because it's like, yeah, that still hits pretty hard. This book does, and it's just like, ugh. All right, it's good for all the wrong reasons, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting because, you know, what's the old saying about, you know, unless you've walked in someone else's shoes, you don't know exactly how they felt. So it's in this day and age, a lot of times you hear discussions about, well, okay, that may be bad for you, but I've also had this experience and it was bad for me, and it's almost like a competition. So right. I know that this at the time, it was printed, obviously, and it was to make that very pointed point, put the very fine point on it, and I can see you definitely. I mean, it's uncomfortable. Here it is, 2023, reading something like that said out loud, and it is, you know, everything's relative as time moves on. So what may not have been quite as shocking in 1983 or 82 or whatever it was, here it is, you know, 40 years later, and it is more. So
it was intended to be shocking at the time, and this was something I was trying to get into, like Key Collector, and just kind of look at some of the points where it had been like controversies, and it was intended to be used to stir up that controversial point, is to try to make a point. It's not, not Claremont being a racist. It's trying to
it's a whole different thing than reprinting. When
Mm-hmm.
DC first started talking about years ago, they were going to print out or put out a reprint volume of Detective Comics, the issues 1 through 26. So it was all pre-Batman, but it was so rife with racist caricatures that they decided against it. Now, whether you believe in, it's got historical value and it should be put out as long as there's a disclaimer, or no, it shouldn't be relived, I don't know. But that's a different thing than this, because even at the time, Claremont was being deliberate with his writing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was trying to find some other examples of that in this list, and none of them are jumping out at me right here at the start. But there's a of course, I don't think this is Claremont. That's not Claremont, so that's not a good example. But I actually just came across this book in my collection not too long ago, Web of Spider-Man number 8, where there's an anti-Semitic frieze, and again, it's to to try to make the point about racism. Oh, here's another one that's a burn, X-Men 190. I'm sorry, not a burn, a Claremont. It's X-Men 196, in an effort to make a point about the offensiveness of the word mutie. Sound familiar? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Kitty Pryde uses an extremely offensive racial slur uncensored in X-Men 196. So that's Byrne. Of course, Byrne and Claremont worked together for a long time. Byrne on FF, I think it was Byrne FF 278. Multiple uncensored panels clearly display an extremely offensive racist word and phrase. So, yeah. It's common for Marvel books during this time period to try to make a statement about racism. So
yeah. I read this was originally supposed to be a non outside of continuity X-Men story, but it's now I don't know. I just read that somewhere. But I also believe, correct me if I'm wrong, this was sort of the turning point of Magneto from being the standard, dime a dozen bad guy, even though a very powerful bad guy, to a sort of a more morally ambiguous or anti-hero.
Yep.
And
and ultimately it leads to him even leading the X-Men and the New Mutants for a while. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So.
This story, this makes the other books we're reviewing seem sort of like Charlie Brown scripts.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, it does.
This is a lot deeper.
Way deeper. So, I don't really have any other notes on this, other than so what else you guys got?
This is not. I don't either. This is something that if we wanted to, you could do a long episode breaking down every piece of it. But it's one of those books where it's like, where do you stop? Because there is so much to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I stopped fairly short of getting too far into the breakdown of the story and some of the thoughts that were behind it. I think we've covered it pretty well.
Yeah. You could get into like the whole 90s, 80s and 90s things where even though this was a special book, a graphic novel, it's like they still have to reintroduce all the characters, because every comic is somebody's first comic book, right?
Sure.
So, and this time they do it by having Stryker go through his files and give a rundown of all the various X-Men, and then you've got the there was something else. Oh, the Danger Room scene where they're practicing fighting. It's just like that's always in an X-Men book where you learn about the Danger Room and just all the little, I guess.
And even though it's a graphic novel, they split it up into 4 chapters that are oddly enough about 22 pages apiece.
Yep. But yeah, there's and like some of the characters that are name drops, like Senator Kelly. Well, he's important in like X-Men 141 and 142, which is another one of the all-time great X-Men stories, which is Days of Future Past. Where going to the future and Sentinels have nearly eradicated mutant kind. So it's Claremont. You had this relatively tight-knit X-Men universe before it got blown out of proportion, and they kind of lost some of the focus and the.
What do you and I don't think Atch, did you read the extended cut or director's cut or whatever at all?
No, all in my book, all I have.
It's not worth it.
No, it's
okay,
not. Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to bring that up just as we're closing out on this, is that there is a director's cut which has new pages on the front end and the back end before the prelude and after the epilogue, oddly, that are, totally different artists. I don't know if Claremont wrote those words or not, but it is completely pointless whatsoever. It does not do anything to help the story along at all.
Yeah, it's basically like Kitty Pryde saying, "Hey, this story happened."
Yes.
And then, okay, that's what happened at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, what was it?
And that's in the 2016 copy.
No, it's a newer one.
There was something called the extended cut that actually got released, I think, in 2020, and they just add those couple pages. I'm trying to see if I can find if they give any additional credits.
It was on Marvel Unlimited, so
of
course we chose that one instead.
Yeah, I actually have. It doesn't give any additional credits for those 2 pages, or that's more than 2 pages.
Well, it definitely doesn't feel like Anderson's artwork, though. That's weird.
Yeah, but again, it could be. It's more because I think like most of it's painted, and those are definitely pen and ink. Those extra pages. I feel like now it could be Anderson. Pen and ink in it instead of painting like he did the original. But yeah, it doesn't say anywhere at the front who did those extra couple of pages. So
I guess I could see it maybe being Anderson's, with the eyes kind of look similar.
Yeah.
I always kind of focus on the eyes.
I just wonder if it's just he did a different format.
Could be. Maybe he did it digitally or something, and that would have changed a lot of the way it looked too.
So, all right.
One thing I noticed that Jean Grey is not in this story, but I thought I remembered seeing her in X2.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jean Grey at the time of this story should have been dead.
Oh, okay.
Oh, because the Dark Phoenix saga.
Dark Phoenix saga should have already happened, and she hadn't been brought back to life for X Factor yet.
Gotcha.
So now I'd have to double check my dates on stuff on that. So
how long did Kitty Pryde go by the codename Ariel? Was that
she got more code names than anybody?
That
threw me off at first.
Super long.
What was the other one, the early one?
Shadow Cat.
No, before that it was like a one word, like Sprite or something. Yeah, Sprite.
Yeah, Sprite.
Okay.
And then just Kitty. She was Kitty, just Kitty for a long time, But then they grew up. She was Kate, she was Kate Pryde instead of Kitty Pryde. And she's just all been all over the place because she's just known as Kitty Pryde. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
None of her hero names have really stuck with her, and I guess it's just that because she was introduced as Kitty Pryde, she wasn't an X-Men initially, right? So she was just Kitty, and that's what hung around. So gotcha. I usually go by Shadowcat if I'm
Shadowcat. I will recognize if I see Shadowcat, I know exactly who it is. But Ariel really threw me for a whirlwind for a second until I saw the power set, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I know it."
Okay, yep.
It's just one of those. I think Kitty Pryde is the best. It's just
Of course, it's a terrible name, whenever your superhero name is your real name, right?
Right. Yeah. If you want to disguise.
Yeah. All right. We ready to grade this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's go first. I actually haven't written down my grade yet. I guess I need to decide.
Oh, no.
That. So, yeah.
So I really enjoyed this. Like I said, there's my 80s era things are hit and miss. Claremont is probably one of my favorite writers from that era, though. So I really dug this. He's wordy, but and I don't like wordy usually, but the way that he's wordy works for me. It flows really well. And like I said, the artwork is awesome. I dug this story a lot. Definitely a classic X-Men story that's on my shelf. I gave it a 9.2 near mint minus.
Mike, go ahead.
Wow. Yeah, you're right near me. I decided on 9.0, very fine / near mint. I think it's nearly perfect. It's something not only can you read over and over, I have read it over and over. and it's just got staying power and relevance no matter what year it is. So it's like you said earlier, that can be unfortunate in some ways. I mean, but we're not quite into utopia, right? So I guess
yes,
shouldn't be too overly looking forward to that. But yeah, a 9.0.
I'm at a very fine plus 8.5. It is an outstanding X-Men story. I don't think it's the best X-Men story, but I have 2 copies of this in my personal collection. I have the original graphic novel, and then I have the extended or special edition or whatever it was that came out in 2020. I rebought it then to have a physical copy to read, though I did this time end up reading it on Marvel Unlimited as well. But I actually read it once on the extended and once on the special edition.
Yeah.
So there you go. So I got my use. Yeah, 8.5. Any person who's an X-Men fan absolutely needs to read this story. And for anybody who's a fan of superheroes who wants a little, meat to their story, then this is a story that you need to read. And to see what happens whenever you have the X-Men controlled by a single writer for a very extended period of time, you get to develop these characters and tell these stories over a longer period of time. So
yeah.
All right, Shad, we're going to let you take the lead here.
All right.
So this was your suggestion on the Dead Boy Detectives.
Yeah. This is actually the August 2001 was when the first issue came out of Sandman Presents Dead Boy Detectives, which is the volume 1 of the Dead Boy Detectives kind of things. We're on the 3rd reboot or whatever of it currently. So it seemed like maybe we should read kind of the start of Dead Boy Detectives. Now, this is written by Ed Brubaker, pencils by Brian Talbot, and inks by Stephen Lealoa, maybe is how we would say his name.
That's how I would say it.
Okay. All 4 covers are by Dave McKean, as is tradition for most of the Sandman universe. And so, yeah, I'll get into the synopsis for issue 1. We first meet Charles Rowland and Edwin Payne, are 2 ghost preteen boys who like to solve mysteries. Charles died in 1990. Edwin died in 1916. We get your kind of just out the gate. What I enjoy about this story is they've got a treehouse where they're setting up their new detective agency where they have their novelty private investigator licenses, and they're a little girl crazy. They get a visit from Marcia, who comes to ask for help because her friends are dying, but are also being aged to a kind of shriveled up old kind of thing somehow in the process. Not knowing the boys' full story, she assumes that they're just plain detectives, and she doesn't really have time for their nonsense and moves on. The boys continue on the case anyways, visiting a morgue and witnessing the shriveled up body for themselves and reading the autopsy report. In the report, there is mention of a crazy old lady near the river that was spotted near the body. They decide to track her down and ask some questions. Down by the water, they learn the name of the crazy old lady, Mad Hetty, and pay her a visit. For those keeping score at home, Mad Hetty was first appeared in Sandman number 3, the issue called Dream a Little Dream of Me. She tells them that they need to go down to the tube tunnels, and that is where the killer is hunting his victims. So they head down to the train tunnels and discover an abandoned area where they put all the old subway trains, and it has become a place for many homeless people to go. Edwin and Charles spot a mysterious person lurking in the shadows and chase after him. They lose him, but run into Marcia, who is looking for the same man. After a close call with a passing subway train, the 3 of them come face to face with the man they are trying to track down. That's issue 1. I don't know if there's anything really to say about it.
I got some things. I mean, they're sort of like they're in advance of issue 1. At first, I want to talk about the cover. I'm a big fan of Dave McKean, but it's his painted work I realize that I like so much in his Arkham Asylum and Black Orchid, and I don't know that I'm a huge fan of this. I don't know I don't know how this is created.
Usually they're very mixed media.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of it, but then again, I'm spoiled by the painterly style, and I even had to look up what's try to sound like I knew what I was talking about with art, but you got cubism, you got dadaism, and then you got surrealism. I think that this falls more into these covers fall more into the surrealism than any of the other categories. But so anybody that's impressed with that analysis, please write.
I was. I'm writing you right now.
At least be impressed that I took the time to look it up.
Just email podcast at birdcomics.com and put Mike, attention Mike, in the subject line.
There you go. My other comments are more a question for Shad. I like on the interior art by Talbot. He doesn't color the irises of the eyes of the dead boys. Is that consistent with the previous style or depictions in Sandman?
I don't recall that. I feel like that is specific to him touch to it. I don't recall them being kind of white or clear-eyed.
It just seems like it's a subtle differentiation between them and the
you can tell immediately that there's something different about these people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, otherwise their mannerisms are like accurate to that of adolescent boys. I mean, one minute they're immature and they're bantering, and then the other minute they're actually trying to be doing detective work and stuff. So I think this is Drew Baker doing a good job, but it's also that I think he's trying to write not in his typical style. He's writing like a Gaiman type book. It's not his usual like detective noir. So that's about it, except I'm not a huge fan of Talbot's art, but it's not like it doesn't break the story for me or anything.
Yeah. The new iteration of Dead Boy Detectives, the one that's currently ongoing, or not ongoing, it's a mini series, but they don't have the white eyes for sure, because I just pulled up one of the issues just to see what the artwork looked like, and they have normal kind of black beady eyes is what it looks like. But I think everybody in that book has black beady eyes. Let me go into issue 2.
Oh, Scott had anything to?
Oh, you go right on ahead.
All right.
One last comment about that last scene where we were introduced, even though he wasn't named yet, the Marquis de Marquez.
Yeah.
How much more stereotypical of a villain can you get in design?
Right.
I'm like right away. I'm like, oh, there's your bad guy. And I'm like, oh no, surely not. But I don't want to spoil the rest of the story. Golly.
So we start off issue 2 with the man calmly introducing himself as Francisco Marquez, or the Marquis de Marquez. He says he isn't the murderer and walks away. The boys believe him at face value, though Marcia isn't so sure. They lose him. It's a wonder that these are actually detectives. They lose him in the dark of the tunnels, though, and they get split up from Marcia as she gets caught by the police, presumably for being on the subway tracks. So they didn't really address why she gets grabbed by the police. The boys leave the subway station and head to their treehouse, now with no more leads for their case. When they arrive to the treehouse, though, Marquez is there waiting for them. He explains to them that they are looking for a man named Gil de Reyes, who originally fought alongside Joan of Arc in 1429. De Reyes longed to live forever and became connected as a murderer, a deviant, and also known for drinking blood. Darius began to work in necromancy and discovered how to suck the essence from children to live longer and feel more youthful. 10 years after Darius' supposed execution, Marquez's ancestor began investigating the mysterious murders, and this began centuries of a cat and mouse game between Darius and Marquez's family lineage. Since Darius has a penchant for kids, Marquez suggested the dead boys be the bait since they can't die anyways, and then he leaves. The next day, the boys are walking around town when they come across an ambulance taking a body of another kid. Marcia is there as well, and they encourage her to hang up the posters of Marquez since they know he is not the killer, and perhaps that will keep her out of harm's way. The boys visit Marquez at his home to discuss their next steps since they are working together now, and Marquez reveals that Darius now goes by the name of Robert Gadling. Oh, Hob.
Okay, so I don't know. Hang on to your seats. You're going to be impressed again. But I looked up the French pronunciation of this character, and it's a soft G.
Okay.
Gilles de Rais is how something like that. But it is definitely a soft G.
Okay. Gilles de Rais.
Yeah, Gilles de Rais. But anyway, there you go.
I liked it. Robert Gadling, or Hob Gadling, does appear in Sandman 13. This is his first appearance in Men of Good Fortune, which we saw the in real life version of that in the Sandman series this past year. All right, issue 3. Marquez. Go ahead. Sorry.
This is the issue where they talk about Gilles de Rais's background of being a serial killer, but it's also it's where there's actual historical accuracy.
Oh, was that real?
You guys, yes, that whole yes, he was an actual child killer that was big into the occult. I mean, we're talking serial killer level. And of course, they also had references to Joan of Arc, and Dracula and stuff like that. Now, those are more mythical, or at least embellished a bit. But I think there was enough of it to impress me by using a real character from history.
Cool. I did not realize it, nor would I have thought to look it up. So I'm glad I've got you to do that.
So I'll be your little encyclopedia.
A little historian.
Yeah.
All right. Issue 3. Marquez teaches Edwin to unlock the power as a ghost that he didn't know he had to locate a person by looking at a photo of them. He does this with a photo of Hob Gadling. Edwin fails at first, though, looking at Hobbs' wife, or unintentionally looking at Hobbs' wife in the photo instead and going to her gravesite. While they're going through the lesson, Charles wanders Marquez's house and notices that the photos and paintings of Marquez's family throughout time all look a little too close to the current Marquez's looks. Marquez then assigns them both some homework and sends them off. Edwin learns a spell to subdue opponents, while Charles practices locating people by just focusing on their name, no picture needed. The next night, Marquez has Charles locate Hob, and then they go to his home to capture him. Edwin's spell doesn't work, so Marquez busts through the door and casts the spell instead. They take Hob to Marquez's dungeon. Marquez says that he has to perform a ritual on Hob to kill him and sends the boys away. With the boys gone, Marquez explains that he has figured out a way to steal Hobbs' immortality and will perform the ritual at tomorrow's full moon. The next day, the boys are walking around when they run into Mad Hetty, who explains to them that they have been brainwashed into following Marquez's orders with the coin he'd given them as a down payment for their services. She also points out that all of the homeless children are missing now.
So far, it feels like I'm reading a comic version of the Hardy Boys, and they have to be dead. Because, I mean, it's kind of refreshing in a way because it's not overly complicated, but it's also like, I don't know if I'm the target audience that can get the most out of it. It's got just enough, though, that I'm not put off by it or anything, but I'm just thinking, well, it just seems like I'm not quite the right demographic for this.
Oh, the mystery is just right on the nose. It's so
right. Oh yeah,
it's so obvious that it's just like, and as I mean, I guess we'll get into it a little bit more with issue 4, but it's like he's training them to capture him this whole time, and like it's so like every part of it is just an obvious plot point, but it's still fun and I think good, and that's what I think is interesting about how the story pulls off for me, is just like, it's so obvious and kind of dumb, but it actually, like, at the end of it, I still feel satisfied.
I mean, it's I wouldn't even say it's quite as complicated as maybe a Harry Potter book.
No,
but it's got that same, I mean, it can appeal to, I think, young adults and adults both. So like I said, they did a good job of at least putting enough. I mean, because there is some sort of violent and graphic scenes in the stories.
Yeah.
You know,
I literally have Supernatural Hardy Boys in my notes. That's all I'm
Do you?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we should let you talk a little bit more. We've been hogging the mic here.
Well, I'm actually having trouble getting logged in to actually follow along with the story. So that's one reason why I'm being quiet. So.
Well, I'll wrap up with issue 4 here. So issue 4, Mad Hetty tells the boys that they should imagine Marquez and who who is probably the bad guy, and since he is trying to steal Hobbs' immortality, and he will be doing it during the full moon tonight, and he probably took all of the kids for part of the spells as well. She's like, it's all right here, boys. Why don't you just try to figure it out? You got all the tools. Go ahead and do it. After trying to find Marquez's home, which has now been magically hidden from them, they are reminded that they know Marquise's real name, Gilles de Rice. Did I say that? How'd I do?
Much closer.
Okay.
Good enough.
and can find him that way. They end up in his dungeon and locate the missing kids. Before Darius has a chance to use Marcia in his spell, Edwin finally is able to conjure the subduing spell. They get Marcia free, but before they can rescue Hob, Darius comes too. Then Mad Hetty breaks in, but she captures the boys instead of helping them. She convinces Darius that he should steal the boys' essence instead of Hobbs, since they were able to refuse death. Darius agrees and performs the ceremony on the boys, but all according to Mad Hetty's plan. Since the boys are dead, all Darius takes is their death and shrivels up. He's still alive, though. Mad Hetty says that she has been waiting a long time to take care of him and tells them to leave so she can finish him off. Back at the treehouse, the boys apologize to Hob for capturing him when they are interrupted by a visit from Marcia, who came by to thank Charles and introduce him to her new boyfriend. His name is Randy, which Charles says is more like a description than a name. After they mourn over Charles's heartbreak, they give Hob back the photo they were using to locate him, which is of him and his late wife, and they ask him how he became immortal. His response is by simply not dying.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate too. Yeah. Refusing to die.
That's right.
Well, that I think it had something a little bit more to do with Morpheus than just saying he refused
Hobbs got
to die.
a little bit of an in. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
But that's one of the things. This is it's an extension of the existing Sandman universe.
Yes.
Yeah. And I did not realize until you suggested this and we talked about it that these were the characters from that one issue of Sandman. At the school for boys, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I had no idea. I had no idea what they were, and they're not the Dead Boy detectives.
No, they're not labeled at that point. Yeah,
they become the Dead Boy detectives later on. So, and that's the other incorporating of some other characters from the Sandman universe into the story, kind of glues it in. It's like this little adjacent piece that you can either take it with all the rest of the Sandman universe or just play with this one little chunk of it. You don't have to know all that history.
Right. Right. Did you find it odd that Hob Gadling actually cried out to Morpheus or to Dream for assistance whenever he was, bound and about ready to be killed? I mean, he survived all of these centuries without Morpheus's or Dream's intervention. So that kind of struck me as, just unusual. Maybe he's not had a need to do that before.
Yeah, maybe he hasn't been that close to it. Or the other thing being that maybe it's because he was dealing in the supernatural. That was kind of where I went to it. Is if he was just held at gunpoint, he probably wouldn't call out for Morpheus. But
that's
to
true.
be getting ready to be sacrificed in a weird ritual, it might seem like, well, it's no better time than now to call the dream card, I guess.
Yes. Well, Marcia, she was, Charles was just fretting and stewing over her, maybe actually reciprocating his fondness for her, and then she introduces him to her actual boyfriend, and it shut him up pretty quick. I thought that was cool. And her hairstyle, if this is like set in real time in the early 2000s, that hairstyle reminds me more of the 80s punk kind of, and maybe this because it's set in Britain, maybe it's a different the hairstyles for girls then. I don't know, but it was definitely that British, and her boyfriend's got that little shaved burr head with a little curly Q in the front. So just couple little notes I made.
Now, she shows up, though, in future Dead Boy Detective stories, right?
I feel like, yes. It's been a while since I've read the volume 2 run, like the 12 issue of that. But Charles is definitely, if I remember right, hung up on a girl. And I think that's kind of his MO, is that he's always the one that's a little bit more girl crazy than Edwin is.
Well, I think I always feel like it's played that Edwin is hung up on Charles and Charles is hung up on a girl.
Oh yeah, that could be absolutely.
Yeah, there was a couple panels that there were statements made that made me think that too.
Yeah. That would make sense. Yeah. But yeah, I wonder if I'd have to go back and look, but I wonder if Marcia is the one that reoccurs and it's not just another, because I think it's even a blonde. So if memory serves right.
Well, I just know whenever the Dead Boy Detectives show up in season 3 or 4 of Doom Patrol on HBO Max, it's the 2 Dead Boy Detectives and a girl.
And okay.
Yeah. Gotcha. So I just wondering if that's just like the common group for these stories. So.
Yeah.
Did you say Doom Patrol?
Yeah. They showed one episode of Doom Patrol. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I've watched that one episode. Yeah, I've watched that.
Yeah.
I've watched the first 2 episodes or 2 or 3, but I haven't gotten back to it.
I can't tell you. I've watched it all. I can't tell you it's worth it, but that's neither here nor there. Let's get back to.
Okay.
I'll start chasing. No
tangents. No tangents.
I don't need to chase that. So.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't have any other thoughts on this except for grading it.
Yeah. My notes were it's not particularly deep or not particularly intense, but I just like how it tied in with that Sandman universe, and it was good because I just had finished. I had read Sandman previous. I'd started Sandman, got through 75% of it and stopped. So then it's like, okay, I'm going to sit down and read Sandman. So I just finished rereading Sandman. And then, of course, when I read the issue with the Dead Boys, it's like, oh, okay, there's their first appearance. Right. Okay, so it didn't really, I guess it just let me know where those characters were heading.
Yeah,
not
that makes sense.
It changed anything in that initial story.
Yeah.
So it was kind of nice to just kind of piece all those stories together. So.
Yeah, and what you're saying, Mike, about the hairstyle, I wonder if, because they don't really say the year that this takes place and how near or far it could have been from their first appearance, though it was published in 01.
True.
The timeline could be shortly after Charles dies. It could be set in the early 90s still.
Could be, yeah.
I didn't think about that, but it could totally be that.
I mean, I'm not a fashion mogul here, but it just didn't. It seemed it's still like her boyfriend seemed more like one of those, Batman from Dark Knight Returns, his mutant or his thug goons or whatever.
Yeah.
They just, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll go ahead. Are we ready to grade?
Yep.
I'll go ahead and I'll be the fool. I'll go ahead and put out here that I graded it as a 9.0. Very fine near mint. Because I loved it. It's just it's the simplicity of this book that like Scott says ties in with my favorite series, comic series, Sandman. And so anything that does it well and ties into everything right there, it can't go wrong for me. So I'm into it, and I like things that are a little bit simplistic. I like I'm a current subscriber to the Gargoyles and Darkwing Duck comics, so I don't need something super deep. So this is good for sure.
Sure. Do you want to go, Scott?
I'll go ahead and go. I feel like I'm gonna be the low guy here. So I gave it a 6.0, fine, right? Because it's good. It's not something I'm keeping on my shelf. There's a very small set of people that I feel like I could recommend it to, right? So you either have to be into like the Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew, right? Or you've got to be pretty heavily steeped into Sandman and want to read everything that has anything to do with Sandman. But it's not something I'm going to keep, but it's not something I would steer somebody away from if they thought they wanted to read it either. So that's why I'm at fine 6.0. It's right there on the cusp. I don't regret reading it, right? I'm not going to be super like if I have a choice between reading the next volume of Dead Boy Detectives and something else, I'm probably going to go with something else over Dead Boy Detectives. Yeah.
It's a good way of putting it. I mean, I'm in between you two. I'm at a 7.5, very fine minus.
You exactly split the difference.
I picked that before you guys even said. And so I think that I'm with you on that I probably won't buy any subsequent stories unless it's just I've got a specific reason to. But then again, I enjoy sometimes the simplicity of just an escapist type little story. It's, I don't have to have a bombastic, multi-layered 17 subplot story to enjoy it. In fact, probably I lean more the other direction when it comes to storytelling. So, so 7.5, I think, is my assessment.
Nice.
All right. Well, should we CLZ Shake to wrap this episode up? So I got mine out here and ready to go. So I'll let the light adjust there and shake. And oh, big surprise! Oh, hey, at least though, it's Micronauts Volume 1, Issue 1. So it is the very first issue of Micronauts. All right, so this was the one that got me started on Micronauts, right? So this is actually from from 79. So it's been around for a while. And I've talked about Micronauts before on these CLZ Shakes multiple times, right? But, there was the toy line associated with it. At the time, you had all the comics with the toy lines. You get things like G.I. Joe and Transformers and He-Man all had to have accompanying comic books. And ROM is another good example of that. And sometimes the comics were more successful than the toy lines. So, but yeah, this one, the one that started it all for Micronauts. I've got a graded copy. I have multiple raw copies of this issue, and Michael Golden interior art. Why they didn't let him do the cover, I don't know, but there you go. It is a Dave Cockrum cover though, so I guess
that's good too.
That's good too, but it's not Michael Golden. But yeah.
Right.
Who's next?
Let me go.
Shad.
All right. What is it? Harley Quinn.
Oh.
Volume 2, number 1. It's also number 1. This is the start of the Amanda Conner Palmiotti run. Yeah, their first one. I feel like they did a couple of maybe number 1. I feel like they rebooted it maybe once again after that. I don't know.
I can't remember if it had a reboot with New 52 or if it survived. I don't remember exactly.
This is the 2013 release. So that would have been post 52 or during the New 52. Yeah.
Okay.
So
maybe it survived. It might have survived Rebirth, I think, is what happened.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
This is actually a key issue. A low key issue, not one of them golden keys, but it's the first team appearance of the roller derby team, the Brooklyn Bruisers, as well as the first appearance of Queenie and Big Tony. I liked this series when it came out. I'm a Harley Quinn fan from time to time, if done right, and I feel like Amanda Conner does Harley Quinn pretty good. And this was her, like, she broke up with Joker and was moving to the city and all that, and so yeah, I dig this one.
Yeah, is that the one where she's? Is it this? Is that one? Is that the?
Yeah, that's one.
Right
yep.
One? Yeah. I have that in my collection as well. So, and I read most of the Palmiotti Conner run on Harley Quinn. Yep. Red Tool and.
Oh yes, yeah.
Are they doing anything these days? I mean, they are an actual couple in real life, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know.
I see both of their names do it. Well, Amanda Connors does. I know variant covers for the Gargoyle series.
Yeah, that's
right.
I've seen her recently.
That's all I see her really on is the variants, but I haven't seen Palmiotti in a while. But I enjoyed them as a team when it comes to the creative part of it.
Yes, I won't retell my Amanda Conner Power Girl sketch story at this time.
Okay. All right, I'm a shaking.
Okay.
All right. Well, this is Superman Family number 212. This is about, I'd say, 10 issues away from its cancellation. It was a dollar comic released in 1981. You got Supergirl on the cover. Some of the other features were, the Mr. and Mrs. Clark Kent, from Earth 2, that E. Nelson Bridwell wrote. They were kind of interesting, but Otherwise, it was just, I mean, if you're a Superman Bronze Age completist, that might be the only reason you would get this. Other than it, dollar comics were kind of cool back then because you got a whole lot of content. So,
was it a 100-page dollar comic, or was it an
oh god, by now they were probably, it doesn't even say on the front here, but I would bet it's only maybe 48 pages by now.
Oh, okay.
By this time, they when they were, I think maybe, I don't know, they got smaller page counts as time went on.
All right. Shad, do you know where we're going with episode number 155?
155, we're going to cover The Accelerators, Volume 1, and Justice League, A League of One.
So, Shad, then, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, where would they do that at?
You can find me most likely on Facebook. You can just look me up, Shad Schubert, ShaadSchubert. And, of course, look up my band, Shad and Thomas. We've got some shows coming up in March and April.
Mike?
Well, you can reach me either on email through the podcast, podcast at bergcomics.com, or m.atchison90 at gmail.com, or on Twitter, you can get me at Mike Atchison5.
And I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at bergcomics.com. And my first show of 2023, March 11th in Evansville, Indiana. It's just a Southern Indiana comic book show, and it is nothing but comic book dealers. 18 comic book dealers. None of the other, dare I say, nonsense that gets associated with other conventions, right? Ooh, I said it. So just comic books. So it's worth even a 4-hour drive just to come in and buy comics. You don't have to pay to get in. You get to look at all the tables, spend all your money on comics. It's an excellent show. He does it 2 or 3 times a year. So March 11th, getting things started. And we'll be back soon with episode 155.
I've been so busy doing synopsis, I haven't done an intro. Oh, no. Atch, I like your lighting in your room. Atch, you've got like half of your face is like kind of dark and shadowy, and the other half is lit up. It's just call me Eclipso. Yes. I don't know, my view, it's not real black or dark, but it's just because this lamp is on my right. You're a little shadowy, I like it. Like I always say, I've got a face for radio and a voice for newspapers. Oh, was there any news we wanted to talk about before? Do we want to talk about the Flash trailer? I didn't watch it. I guess I can watch it real quick. You didn't watch the Flash trailer? No, I didn't watch the Flash trailer. You can say something about your favorite DC actor, Ezra Miller, which is he's actually your second favorite. Yeah, Jason Momoa. I did see online, whether it's a reputable source or not, I don't know, but they said that the trial runs or the people they send the movie to got pretty Aquaman the Lost Kingdom got really stinky reviews, so they're in a panic. Oh boy, they just need to just release it and just not worry about it. Don't put any more money into it. I mean, if they never release it, I can truly say that I won't miss it. I won't miss it either. I won't miss it, and they put it out and it's terrible. I won't be surprised if it is okay. I'll be like, okay, well, I didn't hate the first one, but I didn't really like it either. I just thought it was, Scott always talks about, Momoa. I think my biggest pain or biggest aggravation was the Nicole Kidman eating that stupid goldfish. I'm like, what stupid joke is that? It's the same stupid joke as when the one guy puts his head in the toilet bowl. Yeah, that too, yes. It's juvenile. Juvenile. And especially with Mira, because Mira's like supposed to be a queen, right? I mean, it wasn't Mira, it was Atlanta, his mother. Yeah. Yeah, but Aquaman's supposed to be a king. I mean, James supposed to pee on the artifact to get you water. I was like, really? Come on. Yeah, it was just stupid. It's terrible. Stupid.